at 5:31 PI. It's 10 minutes past 7 o'clock. And of course, for International Women's Day, right, we've got a group of women who are joining together to reinforce the need for collective action to address gender-based violence. Te Aorerekura is the country's first national strategy to help eliminate family violence and sexual violence, and of course, address the attitudes and behaviours that lead to women being harmed by violence. So we're honoured to be joined now with the Minister for the Prevention of Family Violence and Sexual Violence, is Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson. And with that, I say Morena and welcome to the show this morning.
Morena, Aggie, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And of course, do want to say happy International Women's Day to you. A special day to, of course, represent all of us as women. But you know what you deal with specifically in Aotearoa. I mean, where do our Pacifican and Māori women fall when it comes to actually these family and sexual violence stats?
Well, we all want an Aotearoa where all of our wahine, children and families, where everyone is free to live a life without violence, is free to live with peace and to have all of our well-being upheld. Unfortunately for Māori and Pacifica women, we are more likely to be impacted on by family violence and sexual violence, and also less likely to have the appropriate, safe and supported services to be able to reach for help. Also less likely to have the Māori and Pacifica-led work in communities in the prevention space, which is where we need to put a lot of our focus. And so I'm really pleased that on International Women's Day today, we've got, as you said, a collective and representation of women from all backgrounds and communities to be able to say really strongly together, we all have work to do together to end and have absolutely no tolerance for gender-based violence in Aotearoa and of course around the world. And so I'm really humbled that a group of prominent women have joined me to put out and I guess reaffirm our clear call and taking the opportunity that International Women's Day presents to us.
That's beautiful. Of course, you know, and I never want to assume, but is acts of sexual and family violence, are they actually more common amongst women rather than men?
Oh, no, that is absolutely true. Women are 3 times more likely to be subject to intimate partner violence than men. And that is unacceptable. And we know, and you referred at the beginning to our attitudes, our broad attitudes across all of Aotearoa, which undermine women. It can include the daily sort of sexism and patriarchal attitudes towards women, the attitudes where women are not seen as worthy as men. The attitude also is in our system. So we still have a pay equity issue between women and men and earning income. We still have discrimination when it comes to accessing healthcare and housing and employment opportunities and so on and so forth. So at all places, we still have a lot of work to do to change those attitudes that all of Aotearoa, that New Zealand has as a whole towards women, and that is reflected, unfortunately, in the prevalence of violence in our homes and communities. And this is why International Women's Day, it's really important to highlight gender-based violence and say that we are all united and want to work together to end it.
Love. So with Te Aorerekura, how is it specifically, though, going to address the attitudes and behaviours, you know, that obviously lead to women being harmed by violence, though?
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity. Te Aorerekura is a 25-year, a generational strategy to eliminate family violence, sexual violence. It has, I guess, 6 shifts that indicate some of the biggest areas where we need to change how we've been living and how we've been working and how we've been addressing family violence, sexual violence. One of those big shifts, for example, is in the area of prevention. And, you know, for far too long, for many decades, we have put a lot of focus, the majority of our focus, into responding to harm when it happens. Now, it's really important, and Te Aorerekura still makes it very clear that we need safe and appropriate responses, especially for Māori and Pasifika women. However, we also need to turn to prevention. We need to stop violence from happening in the very first place.
Yeah.
And Te Aorerekura makes it clear that we want young people, we want everyone to understand what a healthy relationship looks like, what consent is, what a respectful relationship looks like. We want people to be able to identify that and understand what a strong, healthy relationship is, and also where to go for help, how to ask for help when people know that they are not in a strong and respectful relationships. And an area that is part of that prevention work, for example, is in education in schools. And, you know, the programs and the learning and the teaching that happens in schools for young people around, you know, is it okay for me as a young man, is it okay for me to be constantly monitoring my girlfriend's phone messages? Do I have the right to stop her going out? Do I have the right to stop her from seeing her friends? It's really important that young people get a sense of what a respectful, balanced relationship actually looks like.
It's interesting enough, of course, you talk about certain things. It sounds like control, right? When women are faced with this type of violence. But us as the community, because I know you've talked about there being programs in schools, but us as a big community, how can we actually bring about social change in this area?
Beautiful, Aggie. And one of the other shifts is mobilising communities to do exactly that. We understand that it is actually the communities who need to lead this work on the ground. And Te Aorerekura highlights that gender-based violence is unacceptable for all women, and that is without a doubt. But when it comes to disabled women, rainbow young people, older people, Māori and Pasifika women, ethnic women, refugee and migrant women, we also need to see tailored support services. And we also understand that each of those communities needs to lead and drive the prevention work. And so Te Aorerekura gives us a platform now to be able to say, we have committed together as government, as community, churches, sports groups, all of the parts of our lives, we have committed to working together to be able to sit down and say, what will work best for our community, our neighbourhood? How can government agencies help? What are the avenues of support that we can tap into? How can we also ensure, this is another shift in Te Aorerekura, is about our workforce, and also the workforce includes, because as we know, most violence is underreported, but if it is reported, it is often reported to family or friends or your colleagues, you know, the people who you hang out with, who you trust, not necessarily a specialist worker in the first instance. We need, one of the tangible opportunities that Te Aorerekura is creating are some tools, some guidelines for people and for organisations to be able to hold that space, to be able to be a safe first place for anyone to put up their hands and say, this stuff is happening, or I feel angry, I'm feeling violent, please help me. And there are tools and guidelines coming out shortly for everyone to be able to say, what do I need to do in the first instance? What do I need to be aware of? You know, things. And, you know, part of Te Aorerekura is about saying everyone needs to be believed and respected when seeking help, and needs to have the appropriate support. So getting, improving that knowledge and skill across all of us, so that we're able to then hold that space and then get support, get that next step of specialist support, is what Te Aorerekura is going to do for communities.
Of course. Love, love, love. If you're tuning in, we're catching up with Prevention of Family and Sexual Violence Minister Marama Davidson. Now, we all know this year's theme for International Women's Day is actually about breaking the bias. What does that actually mean for you, though? And I mean, has there been any sort of experiences that you've had yourself, you know, where you've had to break the bias, especially as a Māori wahine?
Yeah, and I have to say, being wahine and Māori is probably the bias I've experienced pretty much all of my life. I mean, being in politics, you know, this term, I'm really proud that I am part of one of the most representative and diverse parliaments and politicians of all time. But I have to say, as a wahine Māori, there are a lot of spaces where I'm not supposed to be, and holding power and influence is not a space where Māori wahine are expected to be and are sort of should feel entitled to be. So all my life it has been interesting to watch the attitudes and the assumptions when you find yourself in those sorts of places. But even I remember as a younger woman and attempting to put my hand up to run for the school board in an area that had absolutely no Māori or Pasifika or brown representation at all, and certainly had no representation for anyone under 40, and I was well under that then. And I remember just the absolute, it was as if I had a cheek to even put my hand up and run and put my name on the, you know, there were proactive attempts from the sitting board members, including the chair, to say, no, this isn't how we do things. You're not an entitled, accepted part of our community. What are you doing putting your hand up, you know? And it left me shaking, some of those conversations that I had on the phone, and it was very clear. You are not entitled to be in a place of power. Who do you think you are? And then when I actually started campaigning, you know, because these board members had been incumbents for over 10 years, and they were like, well, excuse me, we don't campaign. We just get in because we're the choices that everyone knows, and we just get in. And when I started campaigning, going to shopping malls, turning up to community meetings to introduce myself, they were absolutely taken aback and put out. You know, they were like, oh, no, we don't campaign. What are you doing? So, you know, it's that sort of entitlement to power is the biggest bias I have always faced as a wahine Māori.
Wow. Look, Marama, I appreciate your time this morning. It's great to know the work that you're doing in this space. And, you know, I wish we had more time to sort of carry on this Talanoa, but just thank you so much for even sharing about, of course, Te Aorerekura. What does Te Aorerekura actually mean?
Oh, thank you for asking.
I just wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Te Aorerekura is also, I want to credit our tangata whenua rōpū, our Māori leadership and guidance who helped us bring Te Aorerekura to be, and including gifting the name of Te Aorerekura to us. And inside the cover, it talks about Te Aorerekura being the enduring spirit of affection. It's a pathway towards healing and light, and the vision, the strength vision, the well-being vision that we all want for each other, that we all want for our communities, but it also talks about the safe passage of how we're going to get there. And that's what the strategy is. The strategy is a pathway, a safe pathway and passage, but a challenge for us to get to a place of well-being and spiritual fullness, I suppose. So I'm really honoured that the name and the story of Te Aorerekura was given to us.
Beautiful. Again, ngā mihi, and thank you so much for all the work that you do in this space. And again, happy International Women's Day, and hopefully we can catch up again next time.
Thank you so much for having me here to talk. I love our wahine Māori and Pasifika connections. Thank you for this space. Kia ora, Eddie.
Absolutely. No